Okay, let's recap Mike Pompeo's confirmation hearing. First, if you want to be part of the Republican administration, please denounce the Republican administration.
It's fair for our members to ask whether your relationship is rooted in a candid, healthy, give-and-take dynamic, or whether it's based on deferential willingness to go along to get along.
Up next, shameless bigotry smears.
Do you have any views that the Muslim faith or people who believe in worshiping, quote-unquote, other gods, is that just something negative in our country?
And let's not forget the T word.
Can you just clarify for me how you would, as Secretary of State, be clear as to America's commitment against torture?
Oh, so predictable, so fake, so irrelevant. But Mike did fine until this.
With respect to building a team out of the State Department, this is something I've done multiple times in my life. I did it as a tank platoon leader. I did it as a cavalry troop. I did it for 2 small businesses in Kansas. And then I worked hard at it at CIA. I'll leave to others to judge the success.
Oh, dear. Platoon leader, the language of war. Does Chuck Schumer have trauma counselors standing by? I hope Cory Booker brought his comfort bunny. So how do you know Pompeo deserves the gig? Let's ask her.
This man is no diplomat. This man is no diplomat. War on...
Please remove.
She totally nails it. Pompeo isn't a diplomat. That should be on his business card. When you reduce people to gibbering fools, you know you got a winner. See this tweet from Al Gore. Senators should reject Mike Pompeo. He denies the climate crisis and has been doing the bidding for fossil fuel interests his whole career. Well, Gore does know fossils. He's about as up-to-date on world events as Fred Flintstone. Again, if Al's a no, Pompeo's a yes. Here's another tweet. Over 180 national orgs representing millions of Americans, diverse communities, covering issues from national security and women's health to climate change and human rights have now publicly opposed Pompeo. Hashtag Stop Pompeo. Now, that's what I call an endorsement. For unlike those groups, Pompeo's no pacifist. Just ask ISIS if you can still find them. Fact, without non-pacifists, pacifists would be bones under a dictator's boot. Anyway, it's easy to be a holy man up on a mountain or up on Capitol Hill. But in the real world, things are more dangerous. A diplomat's nice, but a realist is better. We need Pompeo, not Deepak Chopra. So no more apology tours or fake resets. We need tough love from a grown-up. That's Pompeo. No wonder the left can't stand him. All right, let's just go around the table here and ask what caught your eye. We'll probably skip Kilmeade because he was sleeping all day.
Right.
Dana, what about he touched on the morale problem.
Yep. And actually, the 2 things. So he's not a diplomat. When he was first in the military, he talked about being at the Berlin Wall when it came down, and that his great respect was for the diplomats from the American State Department who were working with everyone to solve what was a very difficult political situation. And then he said that he recognizes and knows, because he spent some time at the State Department, that morale there is abysmal, and he said that would be his first priority to try to fix. And so if you cared about that, I think that was one of the complaints that the left had about Rex Tillerson. The left is going to end up with a Secretary of State. It is going to be Secretary Pompeo when he gets confirmed. And if you want to hold him to something, make sure that that morale at the State Department is the thing that you keep knocking on his door about.
Geraldo, you're Republican, but you're kind of a hawk. I mean, you're very pro-military.
Yes, I am.
Do you get the sense that when you watch these committees that Democrats kind of live in a world where they only see our actions as bellicose, and they see the opposition as some kind of like amorphous, I don't know, thing out there that we're the meanies and they aren't?
Well, it's a highly philosophical question. I'd rather direct my attention to Mike Pompeo.
Okay.
I reject your question. I have my own answer.
I'll get my team. You should have said I'll have my team get back to you.
I love the fact that the guy graduated first in his class at West Point. I love the Harvard Law School business. I think that in terms of personal style, charisma, he's much more natural fit with Donald Trump than Rex Tillerson was. I think that he'll be just fine. As hawkish as I may be, I think that Pompeo's to the right of me. I think he's more like John Bolton. I think you can consider he and Bolton together as a war cabinet. But I also think that warriors, and he is an Army vet, warriors are less likely to slip into war than pacifists are.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. Kimberly, give me your thoughts and try to make it about 7 minutes long so we don't have to talk to Kilmeade.
I will do my very best to do so. Always a team player. Okay. So I think it's going to be very difficult for them to do anything against him because they've already put him through. If you can be the head of the CIA, how is it that you are deemed to be unfit to serve in this position? So he's got a great record. I agree with you, Geraldo. He's a very good personal fit with the president in terms of he trusts him, he likes him, they're able to work well together. I think he's somebody that's already has now the benefit of the experience of running the CIA. If you can be trusted with running, you know, a secret intelligence organization, and you've done very well there to the point where he trusts you for this next position that is also integral to the success of the administration, that says a lot. So on what grounds other than political and stalling or trying to be obstructionist are they going to say that he's unfit or unsuitable for this position? How many minutes left for Kilmeade's advice?
Well, we almost made it. Kilmeade, what are your thoughts, if you indeed have a thought?
Right, I do. I'm going to be thinking for at least another hour, and then it's party time. So here's what I think. I think the president's finally getting his band together. It's taken 14 months, but he's getting the guys together. Not that agree with him, but they respect him enough to disagree with him privately and not go call 1-800 Washington Post. So what Pompeo's already done is establish with the president a rapport on the most important issues possible, and that's national security. You know those meetings that President Bush used to have that were so vital? The meetings he has now with Mike Pompeo, and when Pompeo's not there, he goes to Haspel, who's hopefully going to be heading up the CIA shortly. The other thing that comes to mind is Cory Booker wants to make sure that he's for same-sex marriage, which is a very interesting question to ask the Secretary of State. But if I just empty the arsenal.
I should have run against it when I had the chance.
I know. Cory Booker's running for president every minute of the day, even at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday. So that, to me, is astounding. And my hope was that Rand Paul, who makes so much sense sometimes, would make a little bit more sense this time. Well, rather than come out and say, why haven't we left Afghanistan? Why did we have the war in Iraq? Well, he was an eye doctor, making sure that everyone's pupils were dilated. We were in the middle of dealing with the Saddam Hussein situation. To come back in 2018 and make him disavow his support of the Iraq war was farcical. And I just think that I hope that Democrats could understand how qualified he is and start to vote yes. We'll respect your nose more.
That was a cheap shot against eye doctors.
You're right, and that's true.
Yeah.
I'm against LensCrafters. I had a bad experience.
In regard to what I said about hawks being less likely to declare war often, I think that it could be Ambassador Bolton and CIA Director Pompeo who are holding the president back for what would be a gratuitous strike at this point in cold blood against Syria. I think it's fraught with peril. The upside is so narrow. I don't know how you define what you hit at 30 bombs enough, 60 bombs, 300 bombs.
So we're talking about that?
I think you're right, Kimberly. I think they're thinking about it more carefully.
I could not disagree with you anymore. I think that for Geraldo, we know where the military sites are. We know where they make the chemical weapons. We're getting our guys in place, getting our people in place to take out those sites. It's not kill everybody. It's wipe out their ability to make this horrible chlorine gas.
By a cruise missile strike to wipe out the.
I think we're sending F-22s.
You need a bathtub and 3 jugs of various chemicals to make that.
I love Ari Fleischer's idea of taking out his palace, make him live in his summer home.
I think that the president's instinct to get out of Syria is the correct instinct. We backed the wrong side in that conflict. The danger to the United States and the free world is Sunni Muslim extremism. We are on the wrong side in Syria.
Iran.
The sooner we get out, the better.
What do you think? Who's be cheering the loudest? Russia and Iran.
I think Russia and Iran are an orbit. They are an axis of evil, but I don't care. I don't let them be as evil as they want to be. Let them share blintzes together and hummus. I don't care. What I care about is the American GIs. I'm not saying we pull out precipitously. I don't think Pompeo will do that, or Mattis will do that, or the president will recommend that.
We have a song. Let's hear from Pompeo.
Who are these people?
Who are these people? Who took away one and that tall guy with the funny hair? All right, this is Mike Pompeo talking about this very topic. How about that?
We have the primary mission that we've been engaged in to defeat ISIS. We did so using a group of men who did great work, and we took the caliphate down, and we ought to be proud of it. There is still work to do. The other objective is to achieve a diplomatic outcome such that there's more stability, we can take down the violence, and so this is a diplomatic task, so that we get to a place where the Syrian people can ultimately govern themselves, and our goal is to make that a post-Assad Syria one day.
So, Dana, you heard crossfire right here.
Yes.
Where do you, after hearing that, where do you see this? Where do you fall between
those guys?
Yeah, Kilmeade and Geraldo.
I'd probably lean a little Kilmeade, gotta say. But I feel like that President Trump was right to criticize President Obama, and even Madeleine Albright criticized President Obama for not enforcing the red line that he put in place that then led to the situation that President Trump is trying to fix. But President Trump also drew a red line. And it was a year ago that he, threw a little missile Assad's way. It didn't do enough to decapitate. We don't have a political solution there. There's not a great strategy, but he's already now he's at risk of not enforcing his own new red line.
A lot of red
How about a
lines.
blockade? How about economic sanctions? How about seizing every dollar that Syria has deposited in every UK and USA bank?
Great.
I mean, when you take an action like this, a unilateral military action, you assume...
It's not unilateral.
You got France and England.
Oh, yeah.
and Saudi Arabia.
there's other people in
Have you
Israel.
seen France step up to the plate? Okay, we're going to offer 12 jet fighters.
No, but nevertheless, it
It's
might not
bogus.
be about, in terms of supplying the military might. The United States is capable and often carries the load with that. But if you have some kind of international, coalition or support where other countries are supporting you, then that actually matters and helps in terms of how it's going to be perceived globally.
If the president does not do something, he will never recover credibility. This makes the President Obama's move to not enforce his red line look trivial.
Last word, Geraldo.
Pompeo will not negate the Iran nuclear deal. He will make it tougher, perhaps. He will suggest that it be tougher, but he will not advocate abolishing that deal. And that is good news for all of us.
All right.